the inevitable announcement of the Switch 2 just over the horizon, and the fact that Smash Ultimate is soon going to claim the title of the longest gap between games since Melee, there's only one reasonable question the fans could be asking at this point. Which of these freaks are filling out their 1099s? There are very few things in life that truly remain constant. Love, strife, a bear somehow weaseling its way into my videos for some fucking reason. But the funniest, and unfortunately most accurate of these, are taxes. And I want to talk about which of these fictional characters have had to do them before.
You're not serious, are you?
Why is this why I want to spend my Friday afternoon? As per usual, let's set up the tiers. At the top, we have characters who have definitely paid taxes before. And let's get this out of the way. No, not every character in this tier is going to have been seen paying taxes on screen. But we're going to have to make some educated assertions. Like, for example, there really isn't a game where we see Captain Falcon submitting his dues to the government. Hell, there's hardly any games with Captain Falcon in the first place. But since we see him own a garage house workshop thing in GX, we can safely assume that he has to pay some sort of property tax on that bad boy. Then the next tier are characters who have probably paid taxes before. This is for the characters who it's hard to say for sure if they have a reason to pay them, but it's more than likely than it's not.
I don't think the IRS will buy that one.
Then we have characters who are actively the ones taxing people. In other words, the 1% royal pocket pinchers. You know who you are. Of course, we need the has never paid taxes tier, but I'm going to go one step further and add an actively avoids paying their taxes tier. So in case any of you are looking at this title and thinking, pshaw, maybe there's like a few characters, but surely it can't be that many, right? Well, what if I told you just about every single Mario character has been caught on screen paying their taxes? Well, except for these two. Fortune Street, baby! Do any of you remember this game from my Ultimate Mario spin-off retrospective? No? Of course you didn't. Because no one bothered to watch that one? Guys, I put so much effort into that. So for those of you not in the know, Fortune Street, or Itadaki Street if you're from Japan, is a video game series that sees typically Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest characters playing essentially what is Monopoly, but with the stock market. It's fun, it's bullshit, it's one of my favorite games of all time, and oh yeah, there was an installment with Mario characters for the Wii, and each one of them can land on the tax office. Which means Mario, Luigi, Wario, Donkey Kong, Diddy Kong, Daisy, Bowser Jr., and an honorary mention to both Toad and Slime have all canonically paid their taxes before. Now this raises some questions though. First of which, why didn't I include Yoshi? Clearly you're new to the internet. And secondly, why did Bowser and Daisy end up in the paying their taxes tier when they very clearly could be said to have taxed their kingdoms? As for Daisy, I just don't think she's as much of a cold-hearted bitch as Peach is. And then Bowser,
I'm crazy enough to take on Mario! But the IRS? No, thank you.
Next up is Link. And to be honest, we can actually tackle his entire series representation pretty quickly here. The Link in Smash Ultimate is very clearly the Link from Breath of the Wild, which we know has had to pay property taxes before. This is due to the fact that he can actually buy and own his own house in his games. Even if that isn't a satisfying answer, he was serving as a regular guard before he was chosen as Zelda's protector, which sounds like taxable government income to me. Then both his variants are children and are not applicable for income tax. You know what? While we're here, let's just... For the first time in one of these videos, being a child has actually benefited someone. Then both Zelda and Ganondorf are easily going into the actively taxing others tiers, and I'm half convinced that Sheik wasn't created to hide from Ganondorf, but was actually a ploy from the Hyrulean government to cover their paper trail on their frivolous royal spending. I'm on to you, Zelda. Just you wait until I start really sounding like Matt Pat. Okay, so I've been here for like a minute and a half, and we've already knocked off like over 15 characters, so let's slow things down here a bit. While we've covered some very early bases, such as the literal tax game, the monarchy, and the children, let's actually look into characters who we have seen work taxable government jobs plain as day. which when your game consists of sentient plants and chewy dog eating rodents, you wouldn't think there's a lot of them, but you'd be surprised. Both Animal Crossing reps fit into this category, considering their game is the second closest thing to literal tax evasion. But we'll put Villager in the taxing tier because, you know, he's like mayor in half of them. Then Joker, Byleth, Min Min, Wii Fit Trainer, Olimar, and Mr. Game & Watch have all been seen running their own businesses or working under an employer at minimum wage jobs. Also, I'll leave this to any scraggler fighting game heads kicking around from back in the day, but I believe Ken fits into this category as well. His Wikipedia says that he worked for an Eagle shipping company at some point, so I'm gonna count that. Does this seem easy so far? Well, I hope not, because it's only going to get stupider from here, because we gotta talk about the probably has paid taxes tier, aka characters in this tier either have a job with unclear payment structures or are seen to own some sort of property, but like, it's a bit different. So the characters we know have property are Pac-Man from Pac-Man World 2, Banjo and Kazooie, and Sonic from Sonic Battle of all things. While I was able to safely put Link in the paid taxes tier due to similar pieces of evidence, that was kind of supported by a pretty fleshed out and understood economy. Pac-Man and Banjo's sense of currencies are either fruit or the concept of music. And Sonic! All right, who are we fooling? Even if he does have property tax on that bad boy, we all know he's avoiding it at all costs.
I've decided I'm not paying taxes.
Speaking of rodents though, we should probably address the Pokemon in the room. Now, one could very quickly argue that all of them either have no concept of money or are owned by a child, meaning they don't pay for shit. Well, as easy as a solution that would be, it unfortunately isn't that simple. For starters, not all Pokemon are created equal, and it's just a fact that some of these freaks are more human than others. For example, I feel like Lucario and Mewtwo are kind of on a different playing field than Pichu and Squirtle. Like, do I really need to explain that one? Also, if we're going to consider Little Max's boxing as a taxable source of income, where exactly does that leave Incineroar? I think we can all agree that he's depicted a lot more human than your regular Pidgeys. After some deliberation, I decided to put Pikachu, Charizard, Bulbasaur, Greninja, Pichu, and Riolu into the has paid taxes tier. This is due to their position as protagonists across the various Mystery Dungeon games. In these games, they work for commission-based freelance guilds, which would surely qualify them for a 1099. Also, for the Explorer games in particular, they literally get the reward money taxed by Wigglytuff after every mission. Okay, and yeah, Squirtle is a protagonist in a couple of those games. I just feel like that narc is depicted working with the cops one too many times, thus earning him a spot in the IRS. That leaves us with Mewtwo, who I believe is actively avoiding paying his taxes, and Incineroar, who genuinely, I have no clue. Just mark him down as probably paying them, and we'll let Squirtle look into it. But hey, let's transition from one anime Nintendo series that has way too much representation in Smash Brothers to another. It's time to talk about Fire Emblem. Like with Pokemon, the allocation of all of these Gokus and Gogets is actually pretty simple. Since most of them come from Nobility, a lot of them can just go into the taxing others tier. So that will cover Marth, Roy, Lucina, and Corrin. Chrom probably should go in this tier as well, but honestly, I think he's too stupid to comprehend that his kingdom has an economy in the first place. And then there's Robin, who, without getting deeply into it, doesn't really exist. They certainly weren't given a birth certificate or a goddamn social security number. Also, they're like constantly fucking the king, so even if they did have identification, I feel like they would be pardoned. Or the queen? I guess that really depends on the
No.
Please, 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 I promise this will be the only one of the video. Robin, for the first time since the Battle Royale of 2024, has opened up an alternate timeline. If the tactician is male, then he does not pay taxes. But if she is female, she is the one taxing the kingdom for her incompetent himbo husband. Then that just leaves Ike, who brings us into our next segment. These characters are either mercenaries or bounty hunters with unclear income sources. is! The characters up for discussion in this category are Ike, Samus, the Star Fox Trio, Mega Man, and the Castlevania Boys. So it's pretty difficult to come to a conclusive answer for some of these characters. Well, except for Mega Man, because I'm pretty sure he's a child. But as far as my base level understanding of these series comprehends, analyzing the economic structures of commission-based work in either fantasy or space universes is a bit tricky. And I'm already not that well versed when it comes to these franchises. So I am definitely open to you guys commenting down below what you think of these characters. But in the meantime, Samus, Fox, and Falco have all probably paid taxes before. This is based on them owning their own spaceships, and I'm assuming there's some sort of vehicle tax on that. Wolf probably should be paying taxes as well, but considering he's a space criminal, he's probably avoiding them. Then the Belmont Boys I consulted my good friend Joseph about, and he told me they most definitely do not pay their taxes. This is due to them being more so roaming biblical slayers than commission-based killers for hire. If you disagree with this assessment, you can forward all your complaints to his phone number at 843-403-2209, 37827-194-4048-572. Oh yeah, Ike. You know, the dude who led into this section? Probably at some point. I haven't played either of his games yet, but I did ask my friend Sawyer about it, and he said he most likely did. If you disagree with this assessment, you can call his phone number at 1-847. And you know what? I've spent the past 10 minutes talking about anime characters. I'm just gonna go through all of them right now. Cloud and Sephiroth can both easily be slotted into the has paid taxes tier. This is due to their inclusion in the Itadaki Street series. I just forgot to mention them earlier. Then we can put Sora, Pyra, and Mithra all into the hasn't paid their taxes tier. The first of which being another child, and the latter two following the Robin trend of probably not having a social security number based on the fact they kind of don't exist. Then there's Shulk, who actually is a bit harder to pin down. Hey, this is Future Joe recording this well after the video has been finished. I'm only just now realizing I didn't do a Patreon spot. Whoops. So yeah, Adam, just throw on whatever footage you want for this bit. I have a Patreon, please go check it out. There's a whole bunch of benefits that are up on screen right now, and it would show some great support to me and the team. Thank you guys so much, and back to whatever the fuck it is you're watching. I was really hoping this twink was younger than 18, so I could lump him in the child tier. So the question then there is, what does he do? Like, we search him researching the Xenoblade and hanging around the military, but he's not properly enlisted. Right? Could you tell I've only played like the first 5 hours of this game? After consulting some experts, we came to the conclusion that he probably doesn't have an official government job. So he's evaded the IRS. This time. That just leaves the Kid Icarus crew. Let me teach you all something about Palutena, because I'd argue that only 10% of you Palutena enjoyers have actually played her source material. For those not in the know, while she seems like an absolute shoo-in for taxing other people, being a literal goddess after all. And don't get me wrong, she 100% would. I just think she's way more likely to be avoiding the IRS. Like, logistically, there should be no real threat the human government could pose to her, but this is just a very Kid Icarus Uprising coded situation, like a throwaway line where Palutena's like, yeah, I'm avoiding the government in account of, you know, the implication. Oh yeah, also Pit has no concept of money whatsoever, and that unfortunately drags Dark Pit down into the stupid tier with him. I don't make the rules. And we all know for damn certain no one's paying Dark Pit. He's not getting offered a dime for his efforts. Oh yeah, I forgot you were here too. You know what? Your game hardly makes any effort to give you a personality, so why should I give you the time of day? Okay, fine. You don't really seem to pay taxes. You are a noble, so you could be taxing people, but you don't ever really open your goddamn mouth, so...
Eric, help me.
We'll just say you don't pay them. Now, can you put that thing away and get out of here, please? Phew! Thank God that's over. Now let's see what we have left to deal with. Okay, this might sound a bit out of pocket, but Steve is going to segue us into our Tyrannical Taxing Rulers category. We've already covered some of them at this point, but we've still got a few scragglers, with Steve being one of them. He's kind of a tricky character to talk about considering how broad of a Minecraft player someone can be, but I've seen an uncomfortable amount of videos going over how to best torture and farm villagers for the best trade deals. So this felt kind of appropriate. Then we can throw King K. Rool and King DDD in right next to him, but with the very important cliff note that the penguin is probably way nicer about it than the croc. DDD at worst is taxing Waddle Dees of the kingdom to buy a shit ton of food. King K. Rool is most definitely using it to create a gorilla skinner. Then there's Rosalina, who in fairness could go a few different ways. While it could be argued she's floating around up in space to be avoiding the government, I just find it pretty interesting that the first thing the Toad offers to do when they join Mario on the Comet Observatory is opening a bank. Right next to Rosalina, might I add. She's definitely got to be taking some off the top there. We're closing in on the final 15, which leaves us with just a few more groups of characters to talk about, each of which having varying levels of explanation required. This next trio of characters are the ruthless galaxy-trotting monsters who have no concept of money and only care about spreading as much carnage across the stars as possible. Can I get a drum roll, please? Do I really need to elaborate any further than that? Then there are the characters from games so ancient and provide so little background, we have to make some very heavy assumptions. These characters are going to include the Ice Climbers, Duck Hunt Dog, and Rob. So the Ice Climbers, despite having next to no information about them, we can safely put in the hasn't paid taxes tier. My first piece of evidence is that their fan wiki cites their age as 8 years old, but they don't really cite where they got that information anywhere. But even if they were adults, genuinely, I think they're only interested in climbing mountains for the fun of it. Like, this isn't a competition or a sport. These little fuckers just do it for their own sick kicks. And honestly, good for them. Unfortunately, Duck Hunt and Rob were basically working with nothing. I mean, off rip, the fact that one of them is compiled of animals and the other is a sentient toy robot, we could just say they don't qualify for taxes here. But am I the only one that thinks they'd both be working for the IRS on this one? Like, Rob could be a worker robot to carry out menial tasks like we saw in Subspace Emissary, sure, but I think Duck Hunt just gets a sick, twisted fascination in ruining people's lives. I can't wait for all 3 Duck Hunt fans to come after me in the comments for slandering their boy. Then the next trio we're discussing are the fighting game reps of Kazuya, Ryu, and Terry, which I've been personally putting off on purpose. Look, fighting game lore is a very layered and in-depth conversation piece for any one of these franchises on their own, and I'm afraid that somehow I'm going to miss a post-credit arcade scene in Street Fighter 4 where Ryu is smoking a joint with Chun-Li, dooking in his drawers when he forgot to file his quarterly taxes. But in all seriousness, it turns out that Ryu's wealth has been a pretty contested topic in the fighting community. It's often interpreted that Ryu is flat out broke, supported by the Street Fighter 3 Alpha art book saying he's unemployed, and this piece of official art showing him using a public laundromat wearing only his underwear. This isn't where I thought my research would bring me, but here we are. Then there are some sources showing Ryu working as a bouncer or security guard for several clubs and gangs. But even if this did pay well, I'm assuming that this kind of work is paid under the table. And while I could go back and forth citing odd pieces of information like this for another couple hours, I think I'll leave it at the most recent release, Street Fighter 6, to give us an answer. It's stated that all the money Ryu gets for winning tournaments, making guest appearances, or helping local crises are transferred to a black credit card given to him by Ken. They go so far out of their way to clear up this Nomad Ryu allegation by giving him a secret title option called Secretly Rich. However, just because he has money doesn't mean he's properly managing it. For all we know, Ken is the only one taking care of his caveman dude bro bestie. Because of the ambiguity, I'm going to say that Ryu probably has paid taxes, but if he has, it was really just Ken doing it for him. Now going into Kazuya, I'm starting to shake in my boots at the amount of research I was about to do based on how massive his Wikipedia article is. But I was pleasantly surprised to see the occupation segment and find out he was the CEO of Mishima Zaibatsu. God, I hope I said that right. Who appears to be an incredibly powerful corporate military faction. Since I know quite frankly, nothing about Tekken, I suppose it could be argued he either avoids his taxes or uses this power to somehow tax other people. But I'm just gonna take the safe answer here and say he's definitely paid some form of taxes at some point. If you're a Tekken fan and think I'm wrong, go ahead and tell me to kill myself. Which leaves us with Terry, who despite having another long list of games and appearances to course through, he actually had a pretty clear-cut answer. Turns out that a running gag for the character is that Terry is constantly doing side hustles, leading him to usually running up a tab and comedically hightailing it out of there. Between this and his traveling across the world to get into tournaments, this seems like a no-brainer that Terry Bogard has to be running from the IRS. That just leaves the final three of Bayonetta, Solid Snake, and Meta Knight. Let's go ahead and guess what the common thread between these three are. I had absolutely no idea what to do for these three. Two of them have wildly intricate lore with alternating timelines and like 3 different snakes, and then this dude is the most flexible moral compass there is. You know, let's just start with him. So Meta Knight could literally be in half of these categories depending on how you look at it. When I asked my community tab, I had so many people either tell me he's too respectable of a guy to not pay taxes, he works for King Dedede so he's definitely getting pardoned, or he has to be taxed because he owns the halberd. But he just chooses not to. So he's either a global terrorist, a respectable Kingsguard, or just a chill guy. There are just too many appearances of this character where he's either an ally or enemy to either Dedede and Kirby, and aside from food, we don't even know if Dedede cares about vehicles at all. Wait! How would vehicles work in this world? There are so many examples of sentient cars or robotic creatures. Does this change how that works? Is the Fat Pat Kanguin taxing my boy Wheelie?
Hey fellas, so Joe is currently taking a few minutes to cool off. So I'm going to interject here and say Meta Knight has probably never paid taxes. Even if there are some instances of him working for King Dedede, there's far more where he's just brooding it alone. So did you guys hear I have a new channel? There's some Sonic videos up there right now and more to come. You should really check that out.
All right, I'm feeling better. So what's left?
Oh, just Bayonetta and the Global Terrorist.
Oh, right. Any bright ideas?
Well, I don't know shit about leggings over there, but Snake certainly doesn't pay taxes. His games are already an entire cinematic universe in itself, so I'll keep this short and sweet. As a clone of Big Boss made purely for war, Foxhound just tend to pay him money for some sneaking around, and then nanomachine him a crisp high 5. Even if the Colonel was to send him to file a 1040, he sure would go and do it, grunting all the way. But then he'd be told there was no record of him, and to get out. On account the government is happier if he's not someone they have to worry about, he's more thought of as an artificial soldier than a law-abiding citizen. How's that for liquid assets, eh? So how did you get on deciding for Bayonetta then?
I don't know, man. Everyone in the comments told me there's like alternate timelines and different realities, so I'm just gonna say no based on the vibes alone.
You really should have played more of these games before making a full video on them, huh?
Oh really? How's that Persona 5 run going then? Brother, you can't just edit your way out! And that's going to conclude our little adventure for today. Now you might be wondering what the real reason is I went through all the trouble of doing this. And well, I guess I should reveal that to you. Well, I think you guys certainly did a good enough job. Why don't we go ahead and introduce them to their new friend? Why don't you go ahead and take care of these little miscreants for me? Well, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next stupid-ass video.